Welcome back to another installment of Analyst Hour. Today, Michael and I are joined with Ian 8 Hale. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Definitely a
Of
bucket
course.
list item.
Um, we are coming off an action-packed week. Dare I say, one of my favorite weeks of ASL in recent memory. Um,
Yep.
it was every game was action-packed, kind of down to the last wire. And last Sunday was honestly was vintage ASL. Everyone who was there was invested in all the games. There was kind of a beauty in only having two games at a time, so the half of the league can watch when the other half is playing. And we haven't really had that in a while due to the rescheduling issue and all that. So it was really nice to get out there, play, and half the league on the sideline chirping at the players, cheering, getting involved, adding to the atmosphere. So that was the first time this season that I think we've really captured the essence of what ASL has been up until this year. So I'm really happy with that. A little spoiler alert, when we unpack all these games, I really have no critiques of any team. If anything, I have only compliments. So I'm excited to get into that as well. But first, Michael and I need to clear our name. It's been getting dragged through the mud these past weeks under the alias of the Billy's bias. It was coming out of the mud when people were saying with our nominees and the ladders for Depoy. I'm not even going to defend that because that doesn't even need to be defended. When it comes to Nick Zelanskis getting his nod, I think he deserves that. I'm not even really going to unpack that. But when it comes to the power rankings, it is clear that there is a misunderstanding of what a power ranking is, or at least how Mike and I do it, and Arvin. So
and NBA.com.
And NBA.com. So we got to get into this. We got to pack this right away. I'll try to make it quick. But I think the Billy's bias joke is hilarious, so keep it up. But if you're going to do it, use it correctly. So when it comes to the power rankings week 4, most of you already seen it. We put the Billies at number 1. We have a very organized system, right? So the number one thing in our power rankings is your streak. That weighs the most. For example, if you're on a 4-game losing streak, that weighs a lot more than a 2-game losing streak. And just the opposite. If you're on a 3-game winning streak, that weighs more than a 2-game winning streak. So the longer your streak goes in any direction, it gains more weight, it gains more traction. So that aided the Billies in being number 1 overall in power rankings. The power rankings are not simply saying this is the best team. It's if anything, it's more of a momentum tracker, right? But along with streak definitely comes your record, right? So a 2-2 team is really not going to be number 1 in the power rankings if they're on a 2-game win streak, right? I personally would put a 3-1 team who had 3 wins right away and lost ahead of a 2-2 team who are only in a 2-game win streak. Because like I said, the streaks really aren't that heavy. A 1-game versus a 2-game, it's really not that different. But once you get into the 3s and the 4s, that sort of becomes most heavy. For example, the Hellkites are in a 4-game slide. That weighs a lot more than the Pack's 2-game slide. And the Billies are obviously on a 3-game win streak, which weighs more than the Pride's 2-game win streak. So I gotta get into that. The reason the Hanamotos are 3rd is simply because they lost to the Pride, right? And they are also on a losing win streak. And the reason why both the Hanamotos and Vikings are above the Spartans have a 1-game win streak. The Hanamotos and Vikings have a 1-game losing streak apiece, is the record. They both have better records. So I hope I articulate that correctly. We've applied this system every week. I heard none of y'all say a word when half the league was 0-1 and the Billies were at the very bottom. They deserve to be. And then obviously the closer and the fuzzier things get, we get more specific. Like, how much did you win by? How much did you lose by? Were you playing against a team with the sub? Were you losing? You know what I mean. But at the thing that leads the case for everyone's power rankings is simply their streak and then the record. And then if it's getting very similar between a few standings, that's when we jump into the very, very niche specifics. But we haven't had to this year yet. So except week 1, obviously. But I hope I clear my name. Mike, do you want to go into that?
Well said. Yeah, as I said, I think it's important really just to say in simple terms, the 2 things that are considered are number one in this order, streak and record. And as you said, that's really it. And by streak and record, with streak being weighted higher than record, the power rankings are what they should be. And then I guess in certain situations, like with the Pride and Hatamotos, where sure, the Hatamotos have a better record, but you also have to factor in if the teams just played each other and that team just won over the other team, you have to put them ahead just because that team's not only on a better streak, but they also just beat that team. So that's where also the record, that's where the record can also get outweighed by streak and recent event. But yeah, I think it's
4-1 looks a lot prettier than 3-2, but there's a 1-game difference there. So it's not like we're saying the 4-1 Hatamotos are being placed lower than the 1-4 Hellkites. Let's say the Hellkites got their win this week, even against the Hellkites.
Exactly. Yeah, record still matters. Record matters, just not as much as streak.
But 4-1 looks a lot prettier than 3-2 when there's just a 1-game separation. So I hope that clears up everything. I think the Billy's bias jokes are hilarious, so keep it up. But if you're gonna do it right. All right. I think we got that out of the way. Hopefully that clears the air on terms of how we do the power rankings. But we are coming off of an incredible week. And Ian, I think it's perfect that we have you here this week because, in my opinion, you just played in my favorite ASL regular season game to date. I don't think I've seen a more intense one. Week 4 is obviously awesome because it's your 5th game of the season. It's extremely pivotal. It's really going to set the tone for the rest of the season. And I know I say that every week, but on top of that, it's really going to start paving the path for teams' playoff hopes and dreams. So, obviously, unfortunately, you were on the losing side of a 21-19 loss to the Spartans. I would love to hear your mentality in that game and specifically crunch time. We definitely got to talk about crunch time when you guys were down and then Colin went off and brought you guys back. And a few bad shots beat both teams later. The Spartans were able to beat you guys. So I would love to hear about what was going through your head and what was going on in the Vikings huddle during crunch time of that game.
Yeah, I mean, we went in confident as one team should for any game that they go into. Got off to a hot start, a little back and forth. Spartans, hats off to them. They played a great game. I mean, you got to mention Campbell's performance. Insane performance from him. Probably his best of the season. And yeah, I mean, it got to crunch time and I'd say we went a little cold. They went a little hot, and when they were hot and we were cold, it was just at the right time for them to sneak out a win. And sometimes that's how it crumbles,
Mm-hmm. We got to definitely talk about Campbell because Mike, you were definitely a big critique of Campbell last week, and as well as of other guys just hearing through the grapevine. But we definitely got to talk about Campbell, who came out hot. He came out with a purpose. And Mike, do you feel that you've been proved wrong by Campbell this week? Proved wrong by Campbell this week?
I don't honestly. I've never been that critical of Campbell, but he did make me look like an idiot in the fact that in our last episode I critiqued him, which he went 0 for 5 or something like that from 3 against the Billies, and once you get to the 4th or 5th shot, it's like, all right, maybe you gotta go another route. So I did critique him for taking some of those threes, but you know what? Shooters keep shooting. It's the Kobe mentality. Don't stop shooting. And he came out and he was pulling them, and he hit him at a very high clip, even higher if you consider the ASL as a whole 3-point percentage. Yeah. So yeah, he immediately looked an idiot there. But I always thought very highly of Campbell, and I think what really showed more than any of the amazing numbers you're going to see are Campbell's intangibles and how he really communicates on defense, how he knows where to be, and just how hard he plays, how much he cares. It's for a rookie, you'd think he's been here for past 5 seasons. He fits right in, and he's doing wonders for that team. And he's the glue that's holding them together. So he deserves a lot of credit for that.
And he has perfect attendance. So hats off to him for that.
Yep.
Yeah, his defense was felt for sure. Spartans as a whole, very good defensive team.
Yeah, we definitely talk about the Spartans because last week I said you were critical of Campbell, but I was very critical of the Spartans as a team. In particular, the whole Nick Resendez, Ian Chowdhury. I said it looked more like Ian's team. I wasn't really critiquing Nick Resendez as a player, but I was critiquing his aggression for sure. Now, I don't believe the stats for that game are completed. They actually are. They're the one game that are completed. So shout out to whoever did that. So I have them right in front of me. And I will say, Nick Resendez completely adopted a different role going into this game. I think he really let the hot hand, he fed the hot hand. Here's his stat line: 2 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, which again, it's the only team, it's the only game that's been recorded in terms of stat wise, but he's got to be leading the league for that week in assists with 5, 1 steal, 1 block, and 0 turnovers. So I think his efficiency really shows, and I really liked how he didn't let his ego get ahead of him, and he fed the hot hand in Chowdhury and Prentice, and unfortunately Beraldi couldn't make it. But the Spartans really looked like a team. We really got that sense of week 1 Spartans when they played the Galaxy, right, Mike? They played the Galaxy week 1?
Yes.
Yes. That
was what, yeah.
Up until yesterday.
They didn't have Nick in that game against the Galaxy.
Yes, but they really looked like a team there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great because they still looked like a team, and now they added Nick into the equation. So I thought Nick played really well. I thought he did a great job spacing the floor. He obviously did a great job facilitating, and he did a great job defensively too. But in terms of defensively, Chowdhury and Prentice also really added. Chowdhury had 3 steals, 2 blocks. Prentice had 2 steals, 3 blocks. Really impressive game from all of them. They really put their best foot forward, and they won. I think a hard thing for ASL or any sport really is to close out, and they did just that. So we heard about me, we heard about Ian. Mike, let's hear your thoughts on the Spartans Vikings game.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it was probably the best game. It's the best ASL regular season game, one of the best ever. I think you saw the best and the worst in both the Vikings and Spartans in that game, in terms of the Vikings arguably had their best half of the season, that first half against the Spartans. I know it only finished 11-7, started 9-2, but just the way they were moving, like, if you listen to the commentary, everyone's kind of just like in awe of how they were playing. Everyone was in the right spot. The passes were excellent. Colin was doing his thing, but it wasn't like he was putting the load on himself. Like, everyone was really chipping in. And then that second half, it started. The Spartans started an 11-2 run, and there was just nothing was going their way. And the Vikings had to resort to just Colin putting his cape on and trying to do everything. And he almost won by doing that. But realistically, that if Colin doesn't hit those 3 shots, where 2 of them are some of the tougher shots I've seen hit in the ASL, that game could have easily been a blowout. And it's crazy because the Vikings played some of their best basketball. And when you look at the Spartans, they started out and it was very stagnant. They were hustling, but they weren't really moving effectively off ball. Kind of just almost just taking a shot because they possessed the ball for so long. And even though it's not a shot clock, so you got to get something up at some point. And once they actually started playing with a purpose, everything started clicking for them. That's what led them to close out the first half strong. That's what sparked their run, playing with a purpose. It helps that when Song was open, there was a good chance that they hit the shot. And I guess just to conclude on Nick Resendez, which I don't think we really ripped him apart last week, but we definitely did critique him. And I like how he didn't. He was definitely. I mean, there was definitely a fire under his ass, but he didn't let it affect his play. Like, there was people chirping. I know there was people chirping the side, like 12.5 point. He didn't care. He just wanted the win, which is. He's been the most mature captain this season in terms of subbing himself out at half and just prioritizing winning so much that, sure, he'll take shit from the sideline. He doesn't care who he gets the last laugh. He got the win over one of the best teams in the league. So overall, a great game, and you saw a lot of good and a lot of bad basketball from both teams.
Yeah, I mean, that was a perfect summary, Mike. And in terms
That
of
was a really good pick, Mike.
we definitely gotta applaud his character, and that's something we've been doing all year. It is so easy to allow the chirping and your buddies, putting 12.5 on your head. It's easy for that to get under your skin and to shoot impulsively and to make impulsive decisions just with the ball and without it. And he did not. He kept his composure, and hats off to Nick Resendez and the Spartans for getting a gritty ass win.
Absolutely. Gritty is the best word you could use.
We've actually been spoiled. The Hanamoto's versus Pride game, those stats are also completed. That may have just happened. I'm not exactly sure. But the Hanamoto's Pride, I unfortunately only got to watch half of it live, but shout out Arvin for encouraging Michael and I to, instead of saying, "Oh, I didn't watch the game, what do you think?" to actually sit down and watch it. We have it on YouTube for a reason. So that's exactly what I did for the remainder of the game. And I gotta talk
Yes.
about the Pride. I said this to Ian in terms of Stephen Shaw and the Pride as a team. I fear we have woken a sleeping giant because the Pride, they haven't done it all year, but I'm gonna say the same thing. I complimented the Spartans. They looked like a team. And that was the scariest thing. In terms of the Hatamotos and Pride game, I said to Jack Curtin, captain of the Hatamotos, I think you guys are going to win and by a considerable margin. My philosophy when it comes to these matchups, I think a good team beats a good player any day. And not to say the Hatamotos don't have good players, because 1 to 4, they all are great players, especially in their respective positions. But it's Stephen Shaw. So that's why I'm saying a good team beats a good player. I was almost right in a way, because the Pride played like a great team. They were moving, they were cutting off ball. It wasn't captured on camera, but I was told, I don't know if it was you, Mike, or someone else, that Stephen Shaw was manning a huddle, which
I overheard him manning a huddle
I could bring
on the sideline. This is true.
I could really bring a tear to my eye. And it obviously paid off because they took down the best team in the league, and the most talented team, and probably the first or second best cohesive group in the ASL. So Stephen Shaw putting up 13 points, 12 rebounds, 1 assist, no steals, a block, and a turnover. I mean, that is the MVP stat line that we're so accustomed to him having. But also with Pat and Costa getting involved, Pat put up 5 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Costa put up 3 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. So, I mean, they all really got their share of the cake. They played incredibly well. Watching that afterwards on YouTube and watching them all cut off ball, Steven he got a great pass. I think it was his 1 assist for one of Pat's buckets. It kind of cut the entire Hatamoto's defense in half. So I really have to applaud them. And if they're going to play like that for the rest of the year, I think the rest of the league is in deep trouble because, like I said, a good team beats a good player, in my opinion. But to have both, really, really scary. So that was my takeaway. Again, I don't think the Hatamotos played bad. I think they just got beat.
Ian, I'll let you go.
I mean, I think with this game, it's tough because you have arguably the best, you have the best player in the league and the best team going up against each other. And I think it was just kind of Hatamotos were due for a loss and Pride were due for a pretty dominant win. And that was kind of just written in the stars, and it's what happened. So, I mean, I think with both teams, it's kind of easy to just chalk it up to that because you know what you're getting out of Stephen Shaw. And now you kind of know what you're getting out of that team when they play as a whole. And you also know at this point what you're getting out of Hatamotos, which is a well-oiled machine. So, I mean, for me, it's that simple. But yeah, Pride looked great. They looked scary. You guys give out a lot of advice in your last episode, and a lot of teams took it. So, a little pat on the back for you guys. But also,
although that might not
great
pay off for us in the long run.
yeah. It's not great for us, but it's good for the Pride,
Yeah. So I guess there was one of the things that intrigued me the most about that game was actually the Jack Curtin and Pat Arsh matchup, where Pat Arsh played the best defense of his career on Jack Curtin, but it also highlighted Jack Curtin's facilitating, because even though Jack Curtin, he wasn't able to get much dribble penetration that game because of Pat's excellent defense, but his facilitating was on another level. And I know they only scored 12 points, but I wasn't aware of how good of a passer he was until that game, and Pat almost forced him to be. I think one of the scarier things about the Pride is first of all, after all the shit they've gotten, which, I mean, it's not like they've been dragged through the mud, but after all the shit, after all their mortal, all this, they are the 1 seed 5 weeks in. After all of that, for this season being that bad, they're the 1 seed. And what's even scarier is that Costa, who he played fine, but he hasn't been even close to his best. And I think last game he had an excellent shot selection and just shot very inefficiently. And I think should keep taking those shots because he's one of the best shooters in the league. And if Costa starts hitting his shots, these games are going to be quick games. It's like because Steven's starting to hit his shots now, and Costa has not had a Costa game this season. He's taking smart shots. They're not going in. It's going to be terrifying when they do. one thing that was funny is I was watching the first half of that game and I was wondering, I was like, why are they putting Jack Curtin on Steve Shaw? I thought it was very dumb. And then they put Carter on Steve Shaw for one possession, and Steve Shaw just blows past him effortlessly and gets a layup. So I was like, all right, maybe they do know what they're doing. Credit to Jack Curtin for his on-ball defense, but he doesn't really have the height to disturb Steve Shaw's shot. So overall, just it was a great game. But if Costa gets that shot falling, the league's fucked.
One thing before, I'm going to ask you guys both a question. Ian, you can answer it first, then Michael can answer it second, and then I'll give my opinion at the end. But one thing I really want to do is someone we haven't really given a ton of props for this year, and it's not that we've critiqued them, we just haven't really discussed them. Is Nick Germano. I think Nick Germano is a perfect morale guy. He's a gritty rebounder. He's a gritty defender. Mike, actually, you've given him some props, but in terms of fourth man conversation, I don't think he's completely out of it. I know his stats don't necessarily back it up. I think, Ian, you're the favorite. I think that's you and Tyler are so far the front runners, but there's a lot of basketball left to be played. But I think Germano has been a perfect move for the Hatamotos, and I think he's a perfect fit for them. And I love how Jack, Carter, and Cole all trust him to take his shots, even if they're not falling. So, and I think that's one of the great things about the Hatamotos, that they all trust each other, and it is so obvious. So I think it's not showing up on the stat sheet, but I think that's attributed to their a lot of success. Ian.
Yes.
Who wins in a best of 7 series to 11? No, we'll call it 21. This is a hypothetical. Who wins the best 7 series first to 21? So if we were to simulate a Hatamotos versus Pride game as many times as we need until the series is over, what's happening?
It's tough. It's tough, casting a vote against Stephen Shaw. I mean, people have looked stupid before doing that. I don't think I'd want to be one of those. So I'd probably take a Stephen Shaw led team, but based off of what we've seen this season, the Hatamotos have shown us a lot more quality basketball than the Pride. But I think I actually in the ASL world, I think I disagree with your take, Andrew, about a good team beats a good player, because we've had great teams and Stephen Shaw has run through pretty much all of them. So I think I'd take the Pride, especially with how they're looking now.
I just want to say,
in probably go 6.
All right.
Yeah. I just want to say, in terms of the great team beats the great player, Steve Shaw was on great teams. He was a great player. He's the best player in the league. He was also happened to be on great teams.
We always say how Teeny Weenies will go down as the greatest team in ASL history.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
Or with the Funky Monkeys. Your poison.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
I'd probably take the Pride in 6, because again, if Costa shows up, then that game isn't even close. So, and not that Costa played poorly, but it's just the fact that Stephen Shaw is going to do that consistently. You know what you're going to get from him. Pat actually hit more threes than he's accustomed to, so that definitely gave him a boost that maybe they wouldn't have every single game. Because he has other strong shoots, but I don't think 3-point shooting is one of his. And yeah, I just think the Pride, they have the blueprint. If more of their shots fall, it's only gonna get scarier. So I'd take him in 6.
I'm gonna look like such a two-face, especially to Jack Curtin, because I thought the Hatamotos were gonna destroy the Pride. But after this week, I'm taking the Pride in 5. Call me crazy, or call me two-faced. Don't call me crazy. I think Stephen Shaw showed me a whole other side to him this week in terms of a leader, and that is something that I've been calling upon him to do, and he absolutely did it. So assuming they play like that, I think you got to take the Pride in 5. And that's not a spite at the Hatamotos at all. I still think they are still the best team, cohesive group in the ASL right now, with the Vikings shortly behind. But I think Stephen Shaw really opened up the door for himself as a character in the ASL, in terms of he's just known for his skill right now. But I think if he starts to look to his other captains who can't really rely on their skill and have to rely on their team, I think he's going to become even stronger as a player. And if we were to run a 7-game series with them, assuming he has that in the back pocket of really knowing how to lead and be the mental and emotional equilibrium of his team, I think it'd be Pride in 5. However, I will say it's gonna kind of be like the Celtics sweep the Nets series where every game is close and the Celtics just came out on top every single time just by enough. I think it would be like that. So I think the total scores throughout the whole series are going to be very close, but I think the Pride would win by a little majority of the time, 4 out of 5 times. So
Yeah.
hell of a game.
I think it's also a matchup thing. I think it's tough when you don't really have if there even is something of a Steven Shaw stopper. It's tough when you don't really have that. And I feel like the Hashimoto's don't really have that, if I'm being honest.
Great. Exactly, because Curtin's too small and Carter's too slow. So it's and Pat is obviously too small too. So yeah, it's tough.
Absolutely. Now we'll jump over to Billy's Purse versus Pack game. Before we jump in, Pissakrita and Sarong were out, so Jack Bod stepped up. I think Jack Bod is such a great addition, considering he showed up to just as many games as a lot of players in the ASL this year. And he has been a great guy on the sidelines. He's been a great guy on the court. I honestly am so happy to see him every week from here on out, if that's going to be the case. I just think he's an incredible player. I have not one bad thing to say about his character or his play on the court. But Billy's versus Pack game. I think Bod is a great facilitator, especially for a big man. He really knows how to trust his teammates, especially when he doesn't really know them. I thought both Owen and Arvin moved incredible off ball, and that really opened up a lot of space. And it happened so much so where I think they went up 8-0. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, 8-0 right out of the gate on the Billies.
But yes.
Yeah, so 8-0. And I think obviously Owen and Arvin deserve a lot of credit, but I think the extra credit definitely goes to Bod. To step in and lead two guys that you don't really know and haven't been building chemistry with all year long is hard, but he made it look so easy. I thought he shot incredibly efficiently. He knew when to take the right shot, knew when to pass it. He also kept his temper pretty in check, which is great. And I think the Billies came out really slow. They kind of, got their shit together and obviously came out on top. And I think one thing about Bod that he really added a weapon to the Pack was his size, where our one main concern with the Pack this entire season is their lack of size. It has never been their lack of athleticism, lack of offense, their lack of decent. It's just their defense. It has never been a concern, but their lack of size has. So I think Bod coming in and really being able to fill big shoes of being an offensive and defensive weapon in the absence of Pissakrita and Sarong, he also added that extra layer of size and height, which he used and the Pack used really well. So hats off to the Pack. And in terms of the Billies, I thought this was Ryan Cadigan's best game. I think this was his most captain-like game. He was that mental and emotional equilibrium on the team. He was able to get gritty. He was able to get tough in the paint. He wasn't afraid to take some shots and stretch the floor as well. And I thought, everyone else served their purpose enough, but I really think the headline of that game was Ryan Cadigan really was the star. And also to go up against a guy like Jack Bodette, who you're not used to. It was a last minute thing. And yeah, I think, again, I thought the Pack played well. I really no critiques of the Pack. It was the Billies won, the Pack didn't lose. I think the Billies, had their full team, won. That's a big thing. And 2, I think at the end of the day, just deserved it more because they played better. But I thought the Pack played very well. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think one of the X factors that you missed was Costa's performance because, we might have never got that ball back if Costa didn't hustle and get it after it was angrily thrown at one of the captains. But we'll leave it at that. I think it was a great game just from an effort level. Both teams wanted it, and it was shown in the physicality of the play. And there's nothing wrong with physicality in play. Obviously, you have to keep your emotions in check. And I just the Jack Bodette, as you said, I guess my only critique of him is he didn't open our invite to be captain at the beginning of the season because that would have been awesome if he did. But he was great on the court. I think he is the perfect captain sub where he's not too good that it's unfair, but he can win it. He could have won that. They very well could have won that game. He can win a game. And if he beats you as a captain sub, you can't complain because he's not unfair. And if your team loses Lee subs to your captain, you can't complain because he's as good as you're going to get. So he was great. I think he definitely deferred to his teammates more than he would if it was his team, because it's not, and he doesn't want to be taking every shot when it's Arvin and Owen's team. And really, and yeah, but he was great. Arvin actually had a very good offensive game in terms of his interior finishing. He didn't hit his shots, which definitely, if Arvin was hitting his shots, they could have very well won that game. He wasn't hitting any of his shots, but he had some very tough finishes that I didn't know he was capable of, and at his height isn't easy. And yeah, I think Ryan had his best game of the season, regardless of how good as he played. You had your best game of the season, and Z didn't need to have a spectacular game because of that, because of how well you guys played. And he did his role. He hit his shots, but he didn't need to. Besides his defense and rebounding, he didn't need to get that involved because of how well you and Ryan were playing. So yeah, it was a great game. The Pack should keep their heads high because they had 15 points without their captain and first round pick. But yeah, it definitely says more about the Billies than it does the Pack.
Yeah. But one thing I do want to say is, yes, we got to address the elephant in the room. Arvin's little outburst definitely wasn't.
You didn't like my passive terms there.
But one thing I will say is Arvin did leave it out on the court. He got back to his regular self. He apologized, which it takes a real man to do. And also, if we're going to shit on him for having a misconduct in terms of behavior, we also need to give him props for his great conduct of behavior when, perfect segue into our next game, during the Galaxy and Hellkites game, when Dan went down with his ankle injury, without any prompt, Arvin ran over to the cooler, opened said cooler. I don't know whose shirt he used. I think it was his own, which is even more nice. And filled up that shirt with some ice, wrapped it, and gave it to Dan. And that is something that I never would have thought of. Mike, we talked about it. You never would have thought of it either. So even though Arvin did misbehave during our game when emotions were running high, when he really did conduct himself with such care. And I know it looked bad the way he conducted himself during our game as a commissioner and just as a person. I think he made up for it and more when during a neutral ground and helping out Dan, helping out a fallen player. To me, that was just pure character. And I think that should be remembered more than his outbursts on the court, except the refusing to get that ball. But other than that, I thought
we'd still be there if it wasn't for Costa.
Yeah. But I think we need to remember more that Arvin is more of that person to bring the ice thing over and sacrifice his own shirt, time, and the ice than he was out there on the court. So hats off to Arvin for that. I really think
one last thing about Arvin is I love the intensity he plays with. Like, I love the physicality, intensity. Like, he doesn't like try to hurt anyone. He gets about as physical as you can get without doing it. Like, I actually do love and respect the way he plays. So I was really only complaining about his outburst, but I do love the intensity he brings to the game. So I'll leave it at that.
Exact same thing Ryan and I told him post game. He came up and he apologized, and we were like, no, dude, like I said, except refusing to get the ball. That was kind of annoying and weird. He said he was tired, so do what you will with that. He laughed. He said, "Hi, I know he was tired." But honestly, like both Ryan and I said this, and I guess you do as well. Like, we appreciate that energy so much because to bring it is awesome enough, but then to leave it on the court after, hug it out is even better. I mean, I said, I think that shows character and it shows maturity. And when we look back on week 4 of the ASL 2023 season, I think we got to look at the Spartans, the Viking game, number 1, but I really think we got to look at Arvin's lending an extra hand to Dan more than his outburst in the game, because I think it shows more in a neutral position when you're more calculated, your character versus, the very tense situation. But enough on that. We'll put a cap on that. We'll head over to the Hellkites versus Galaxy. This is TJ's first game as a Hellkite. I'll just kind of give a quick analysis. I think they looked so much better with TJ. I know they struggled offensively. I think they only put up 10 points, if I'm not mistaken. They had an incredible first half and really struggled the second half. But like I said, I still think they look better They were moving the ball more. They looked like a team, which is something they've really been struggling with thus far. So I think TJ has been a great addition. And again, that's no spite to Rishi. Rishi's a good captain. He's an incredible skill, and we love to have him in the league. But I think TJ has stepped up tremendously, and I think Tavares, Trottier, and Stylos feel it. That's it.
Yeah, in terms of actually, Ian, did you see that game? I'll let you go.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that game in person and on YouTube. I kind of stopped when it kind of got derailed a little bit. But no, yeah, I thought they looked great. I thought Hellkites, you could visibly see them kind of have a change in energy. I don't know if that you can really blame Rishi for that, but I think they just kind of needed a fresh start for a week and kind of take the rest of the season from there. Even if they kind of dug themselves in a hole record wise, playoff future wise. But no, yeah, hopefully we can see a great end of the season from them, because they definitely have the talent. And even Pete had a great game, hit a 3. So shout out Pete, fellow fourth man. But no, yeah, they looked good. But I think Galaxy just had a little too much for them this week.
Yeah, one thing about the Hellkites is they scored 8 of their 10 points in the first half. They looked pretty bad in the second half, but I've been shitting on the Hellkites for weeks about giving up in these games, and they did not quit this week. They deserve all the credit in the world for that. So I'm not going to criticize them too hard. Like even when it was before the injury, which obviously sucks, and we hope Dan gets better as soon as he can, because he is a good addition to the league. I do like what he brings to the league, most of it at least. Yeah, really hoping Dan heals up soon. But that the Hellkites, they didn't care. They were busting their ass when it was 17-9. They were like it was 0-0. So they kept their heads high. They tried hard. I think TJ did a great job just not trying to overstep his bounds, but he obviously steps in as the best player on that team, and he played like it. And it's just, yeah, they really did. They played hard, and that's all you can do. And I love all of them as ASL players. They're in a tough situation, obviously record and standings wise, but they all deserve. I really hope they have a great end of the season, because they all deserve it. And shout out to them for finally playing their ass off the entire game, regardless of the score.
Absolutely. I think TJ stepping in. I think TJ is a pure class act. I think TJ is the man. And we're happy to have him stepping up. Definitely start the hashtag now. Pray for Dan. We wish him a speedy recovery. Yeah. Sucks to see someone go down like that, kind of like a fluke injury when he just came back from his trip. The Galaxy will miss him, as well as the rest of the league. I'm sure he'll show up, but in terms of the court, we will definitely miss him and what he brings court wise. With that said, Will O'Neill, an ex-ASL Spartan,
Honey Badger, Ben Captain,
is stepping up. So shout out to him. We look forward to having you. I'm sure the Galaxy look forward to having you, and we are all excited to see what you bring to the league. Now, that kind of went through all the games, but we did talk about what week 4 meant for the rest of the season and playoff hopes and dreams. Luckily, we have an ASL savant in the house, Michael J. Goldsmith, who slaved over finding out every scenario for every team and what each team needs to do and what each team wants to happen to keep their playoff hopes alive. So, Mike, I'm going to shut up. Ian's going to shut up, and you have the floor. Tell us. Start in any conference. Pick your conference.
All right, let's start with the simpler conference, which would be the West, which is the Hatamotos, the Vikings, the Billies, and the Hellkites.
Hatamotos on the latest post, but we will update it when we do the standings. We apologize for the latest post, but it will be fixed. Go ahead, Mike.
The conferences were actually wrong in our last post, East and West wise. The Hatamotos have clinched a playoff berth, which will be posted on Instagram soon. But shout out Hatamotos, you are in. The first round bias still up for debate. We're not going to go over first round bias scenarios right now. We're just going to strictly do you make the playoffs or not. For the Vikings and the Billies, all they need is one win or one Hellkites loss. The Vikings have still not clinched in due to the Hellkites' only victory being against the Vikings in week 1. The Billies play the Hellkites in week 7. So if the Hellkites win out and the Billies lose out, they take the Billies spot. If the Hellkites win out and the Vikings lose out, they take the Vikings spot. So it's that simple. Either of those teams, the Billies and Vikings, win and Hellkites, you got to win out, and you're going to need some help. But you're not out of it yet, so don't give up. Now, I'm going to have to pull up my notes on my phone. Yes, it is with the Newcastle. I'm going to have to pull up my phone here.
Michael said week 7 is actually week 6. It's game 7, but it's week 6.
Yeah. Game 7, week 6. Yeah, the doubleheader week, confusing. And so I want to just give a disclaimer for this, that there might be other playoff scenarios out there for these teams. However, all of these scenarios will guarantee you in. I'm pretty sure it covers everything. There might be a scenario out there I missed, but if you do what I'm about to say, you will make the playoffs. And let's start with the Pride, who clinched with, if the Pride win, they are in, or if the Galaxy lose, they are in, because the Pride have the tiebreaker over the Galaxy. So if the Galaxy lose, all they need to do is be one game up on the Galaxy next week, and the Galaxy can't catch them, because even if they have tied records, the Pride have the tiebreaker. So winning, they're in. Galaxy losing, they're in. For the Galaxy, they would actually clinch a playoff berth against a win over the Pack in week 6. That is 2 weeks from now. That is because the Galaxy, even the Pack obviously wouldn't be, if the Galaxy beat the Pack, they will have the game advantage of them. Even if the Pack won in week 5 and the Galaxy lost week 5, it wouldn't matter. That Galaxy win over the Pack would guarantee them in and would screw over the Pack. So the Galaxy, you know, win the Pack over the Pack week 6, or if the Spartans lose out, you're also guaranteed in, because the Galaxy beat the Spartans in week 1, so they have the tiebreaker over the Spartans. The Spartans clinch a playoff berth. They need both a win and a Pack loss, so they're going to need a bit of help, but the Pack do have a tough schedule remaining, so they really just need to focus on winning, and I'm sure they'll be fine. But yeah, a win and a Pack loss for the Spartans will get them in, as they do have the tiebreaker over the Pack. And for the Pack, they will clinch a victory over the Galaxy in week 6. So that week 6, which is 2 weeks from now, that week 6 Galaxy Pack matchup, the winner of that will make the playoffs regardless. Or if the Pride get one win, if the Pack get one win and the Pride lose out, the Pack would also clinch, because they do have the tiebreaker over the Pride. So I hope I did a good job explaining that. I know it's a lot of information. I know I probably jumbled that a little bit, but if you do those scenarios, you're in. So it's really a wide open race, and I'm beyond excited to see what happens, especially in the Eastern Conference, because that is a gauntlet.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Kudos to you for figuring all that out. Truly an incredible job. We will take your word for it. There's no one better for the job than you to figure that stuff out. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure anyone else watching this appreciates your efforts. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you, Ian, for coming on. We appreciate it. You were great.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you guys next week. Bye.